All right, let's take a quick mental trip back, say, 17,000 years. Picture this. You're an early human. You wake up on the African savanna. You stretch your arms, take in that beautiful sunrise. And at absolutely no point do you think, what would really complete this morning? A nice pair of pants. Yet today, billions of us wake up and immediately get dressed. We've actually built an entire legal system around it. I mean, you can literally be arrested for not participating. It's a legally mandated absurdity when you really stop and think about it.
Which brings us to the core question of our explainer today. Why exactly do we wear clothes? Because honestly, it's deeply bizarre that we're the only species on the entire planet that gets dressed. Just think about the rest of the animal kingdom for a second. Dogs don't wear clothes, wolves don't, and the elephant, an incredibly intelligent creature, objectively smarter than some people we probably went to high school with, has never once stopped its journey across the plains to think, man, I really need a jacket for this weather. This brilliantly illustrates what scientists actually call the naked ape problem. Just about every other large mammal on Earth, bears, lions, horses, gorillas, they all walk around in a full, thick fur coat, no matter what crazy climate they live in. And then there's us, humans. We're smooth, maybe a little patchy, sporting this evolutionary look that basically says, yeah, I used to have fur, but I made some choices. The leading theory here is that as our ancestors moved out of the forests and into open grasslands, we started running long distances to hunt. Now, if you're covered in thick fur while trying to run down prey, you're going to overheat, collapse, and die hungry. So to survive, we shed the fur. To replace that fur, we developed a completely new biological cooling system, and the numbers are just staggering. Humans have anywhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands on their bodies. We are, without exaggeration, elite, world-class moisture emitters. Honestly, if there were an Olympics for sweating, humans would take gold in every single category. Now, having millions of sweat glands is absolutely fantastic for cooling down during a summer hunt on the savanna, but it is a terrible, life-threatening design if you're trying to survive a Siberian winter with nothing but a rock. So logically, you'd probably think clothing was just a simple reaction to getting cold, right? Well, that conventional story completely unravels when we actually look at the dates. The classic narrative says humans moved out of Africa, hit colder climates, and wrapped themselves in animal skins to avoid freezing. Except the earliest genetic evidence of clothing appears up to 170,000 years ago, while mass human migration into colder climates, that didn't even start until around 70,000 years ago. That means clothes appeared tens of thousands of years before we went anywhere cold. So warmth was absolutely not the original reason we got dressed.
So that begs the question, how do we actually know when humans started wearing clothes? Because ancient animal hide doesn't exactly survive in the archaeological record for 170,000 years. Well, it comes down to a massive breakthrough by researchers at the University of Florida, and it involves some truly bizarre evolutionary detective work centering on something we all universally despise: lice. Yes, we are literally talking about lice, and I promise you, it is exactly as gross and as fascinating as it sounds. Okay, so humans deal with two main types of lice. Head lice, as you know, live exclusively in your hair. Body lice, on the other hand, are a genetically distinct population that lives specifically in clothing. They hide in the seams, the folds, the fabric itself. In fact, they literally cannot survive on bare human skin. They absolutely require the warmth and shelter of fabric seams to live, which means, and this is the crazy part, their evolutionary split from head lice marks the exact moment we started wearing clothes consistently enough to create a brand new ecological niche for a parasite. When researchers mapped this genetic split, it revealed a shocking timeline. The divergence happened somewhere between 170,000 and 83,000 years ago, way before we ever left Africa. A universally hated insect, the exact thing that ruins modern camping trips and causes absolute panic in elementary schools, accidentally preserved the earliest evidence of human fashion. The lice knew we were getting dressed long before our fossil record ever did. Okay, so if we weren't trying to survive a snowstorm, why in the world did we put clothes on in the first place? Well, it mostly comes down to two main theories. The first one is just basic physical protection. I know it's pretty unglamorous, but if you're walking through tall grass and thorny scrubland all day, draping a crude animal hide over yourself provides a solid barrier against the blistering sun, biting insects, and sharp vegetation. It vastly reduces your risk of getting an infection from small cuts. But the second theory, this is where things get genuinely fascinating: social signaling. You see, humans are profoundly social animals. And social signaling is basically our compulsive, nonstop need to visually communicate who we are to everyone around us.
We are bone-deep obsessed with hierarchy. We constantly want to broadcast to our group, hey, am I dangerous? Am I attractive? Am I powerful? Do I belong here? Today, we do it with hairstyles, posture, and, brand name sneakers. But early humans realized very quickly that what you drape over your physical body is the ultimate billboard for your identity.
To put that into perspective, 200,000 years ago, well before the lice tell us we had consistent clothing, our ancestors were already painting their bodies with ochre pigment. The impulse to decorate ourselves is incredibly ancient. So the jump from painting your skin to, say, draping a specific rare animal hide over your shoulder, that isn't a massive cognitive leap at all. And once you're wearing it, well, naturally you start arguing over who gets to wear the cool leopard skin to show off their status. And boom, welcome to the world's very first fashion industry.
However, clothing didn't remain just a fun fashion statement or a simple defense against thorns for very long. Eventually, the climate turned incredibly hostile. Between 120,000 and 70,000 years ago, these brutal glacial cycles hit the Earth. Food sources collapsed, lakes dried up completely, and the global human population crashed to a staggering low. We're talking just 10,000 to 30,000 individuals left. We almost went entirely extinct. For the resilient few who survived and pushed north, clothing suddenly stopped being just a social signal. It became the literal thin line between life and death.
In those freezing conditions, humans had to adapt, and they had to do it fast. Step one was just draping crude, rough animal skins around themselves, basically the prehistoric equivalent of wearing a plastic bin bag. But to survive a glacial winter, you need way more than that. This necessitated a massive engineering leap, the invention of the bone needle for precise stitching. That invention changed everything. It allowed early humans to craft fitted, sewn seams that actually sealed heat against the body, protecting vulnerable areas like the wrists and the neck from freezing temperatures.
And we actually have physical proof of this prehistoric genius. About 50,000 years ago, deep inside the Denisova cave in Siberia, someone crafted a bone needle. It was made from a hollow bird bone, carefully shaped and polished, with a tiny, precise eye to thread sinew through. This isn't just a basic survival tool, guys. It represents an absolute masterpiece of human imagination and craft. Someone actually envisioned a tool that didn't exist yet, figured out how to bore a tiny hole without shattering the brittle bone, and engineered a way to join two materials with a repeatable stitch. It was pure design thinking triumphing over brute force.
But right here is where we need to complicate that neat, tidy little narrative that we, modern Homo sapiens, were the only ones smart enough to invent all of this. Because it turns out Neanderthals were independently processing hides and making clothes long before they ever encountered us. And the Denisovans, a mysterious human lineage discovered in that exact same Siberian cave, they were creating pierced and polished ornaments for symbolic decoration. Multiple different human species, living in completely different environments, all arriving at the exact same solution. It raises a kind of unsettling question. Is getting dressed just an inevitable trait of being a smart, bipedal primates in a harsh world?
Yet what truly separates our relationship with clothing from just a simple survival instinct is this. Clothing is a universal human language of identity. Think about it. If clothes were purely practical, every culture on Earth would have just converged on the most thermally efficient solution, like thick hides up in the Arctic and light plant fibers down in the tropics. And we would have just stayed standardized forever. But we didn't. Humans don't optimize perfectly for temperature. We took clothes and turned them into a deeply complex symbolic language to broadcast our rank, to show we are in mourning, or to celebrate. We can see this intentional, artistic communication vividly in an amazing discovery made in the Republic of Georgia. Researchers there found twisted plant fibers dating back 30,000 years. Now, this was early fabric, sure, but what is absolutely crucial here is that these fibers were dyed in multiple colors. Someone, tens of thousands of years ago, looked at a perfectly functional piece of cloth and thought, you know what? This needs to be a different color. This needs to mean something. Early fabric was deliberately, beautifully decorative. And this drive for expression just exploded during the Neolithic agricultural revolution around 10,000 BCE. We started cultivating flax for linen, shearing domesticated sheep for wool, and mass-producing cotton and silk. This essentially birthed the specialized wardrobe as we know it today, having different outfits for work, for rituals, for status. It launched a massive textile industry that, long before the Industrial Revolution, financed entire empires, caused devastating wars, and completely reshaped global trade routes. And the whole shebang started from a cold, naked primate just wanting to signify who they were to the rest of the group. I want to leave you with this really incredible thought. We didn't just evolve bodies suited for the world, we built a second skin and carried it everywhere we went. Whatever you are wearing right this exact second, you made conscious and probably some unconscious choices this morning to signal your identity to the world. You are doing the exact same thing that ancient human on the savannah did 150,000 years ago when they stained a hide with ochre. What connects you directly to them across all that time is the simple fact that you got dressed today.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to pose one final, slightly provocative question to you. Knowing everything we now know about how utterly central clothing is to our identity, our survival, and our social standing, if you could, would you ever go back in time and live completely naked? Let that sink in for a moment. Reflect on this fundamental, very weird human quirk, and feel free to share your thoughts on it. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I will catch you in the next one.